Before we go into the podcast, I want to just talk about a business that I've set up with my friend George. It is called the Podcast Introduction Group. So if you want to join and be able to be featured on 24 to 48 podcasts to be able to reach an amazing audience, this is the place you need to go to. Podcast, being a guest on podcasts, is automatically establishing you as an authority and is able to build your personal and professional brand. We handpick of a bank of podcasters that we have to be able to grow your business and brand. We do 100% of everything that needs to be done by my team. You do not need to lift a finger. You are able to expose yourself to new and relevant markets by going on other people's podcasts. You also are able to create brand loyalty. People will love listening to you and coming back to your products or services, and it's able to increase your revenue. So if you want to be able to get involved, you can sign up quickly, registered with an account manager. There's an onboarding call where we target the podcasts that you want to be on, the type that you want, whether it's entrepreneurship, business, health, fitness, whatever it is. We then match you to those podcasts and you can start your journey. We have regular catch-ups with our account managers, and Google ranks you when people search for you. So when people are searching for you, you're able to see your podcasts at the top of the list. So if you are interested in being a podcast guest on multiple podcasts, we are the place to go. If you go to podcastintroduction.com and go and register your details, we will have a quick call with you, match your podcast that you want to be on, and we can then start this process ASAP. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back onto the podcast then. Just one last thing before we go into the podcast. I just wanted to talk to you about the fact that I have a YouTube channel that has been going for quite some time, and I am recording and releasing all of my interviews with some short videos as well on YouTube. So please do check it out. YouTube on Absolute Business Mindset. You'll see a bunch of interviews there, all the longer format interviews and some short videos as well. So please enjoy that. And here goes with the podcast interview. Today we have Ibrahim Abdel Rahim, who is a managing partner at Moonbase Capital. Hello, Ibrahim. How are you today?
Hi, Mark. How are you? Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to talk a little bit through your journey to success, some of the milestones, but equally we're going to go deep into certain areas about mindset and about how, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, you impact your team, you can impact your family, impact your society and your culture. That is also really important. So with the podcast being called Absolute Business Mindset, my first question is always, what does a business mindset mean to you?
So for me, a business mindset is really about creating and growing organizations, and organizations that have somewhere they're going. So it's strategy or a plan. And for me personally, it's all about getting the team, the people excited enough and involved enough that they go this path with excitement. And so for me, it's all about this, building these organizations and how to move them and grow them with passion and with people who are engaged.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you talked about teams and building teams. How have you approached building teams from a small business to large businesses? So we're going to cover ideas that you worked for McKinsey and for Durla, which are large organizations, large companies, but you've equally started Moonbase Capital as well, which was started as a small business. How do you build teams that are effective and the right people in those places that you need, whether it's a large corporate or a small startup?
For me, it always starts with a plan, where we want to go. And I think that's a key part which people in some case ignore. But if you already are clear with your team on where you are roughly and where you want to go roughly, then choosing the right people, making sure people are excited and fit well in this specific journey, training them for this specific journey becomes much easier. So in my case, what we've done a number of times, and it worked really well, was starting off with a workshop over a few days, over a certain process where we all as a team agree on where we want to go, where we want to take this company, what excites us. And it's really very personal. So it has to be a discussion with the whole team. Eventually, from that point, we come up with certain plans depending on the department, depending on the person, and then we come up with how roughly we want to do this. And then it becomes really easy. What talents are missing? What talents will not fit in this specific journey? What talents do we need to train? So then from there, you can really build it. And for me, I think what this idea brings is the excitement. I think it's hard to have your team engaged. And one good way to do it is if they are convinced of a dream that we're all together trying to tackle or to reach, because that makes them all talk the same talk. Everyone's aligned. And you can clearly see who's engaged with this specific dream and who's not, so you know who to tackle and how to tackle it. So yeah, this is what's been working for me, and I think it's a good way to align everyone and move forward.
Absolutely. From the outset, to make sure everyone's moving in the same direction. Absolutely. I think that's a really important point. Right, let's go all the way back to your upbringing. So I believe you were brought up in Cairo, is that right?
Yes. I was brought up in Cairo in a family. My father had an SME similar to the ones we invest in now. So my whole childhood was all about, you need to grow up and join me in my SME, and we take this SME and make it a conglomerate. This was for years and years, my dream was to take this SME and turn it into a conglomerate. And I'm thankful for my father for pushing me like this, because I think entrepreneurship for some people is very unnatural. For me, it's just a way of life, because it was always, you do your own thing, So I'm quite grateful that I have this mindset from a young age.
Were you good at school?
No, I wasn't good at all, actually. No. I was the type of student who wants to joke in class and joke around rather than my teachers usually used to say he's smart, but he doesn't do the effort he needs to do, which is weird, because my friends always make fun of me because I ended up doing 2 MBAs, one at INSEAD and one at Stanford. So, but no. I only became good at school when I wanted to learn, which is the INSEAD days when it started. Before that, for me, learning was, I'd rather joke around. So no, I wasn't.
Okay. And you talked about joining your father's business, Delta Aromatic International. What did you learn from being in a family business? Not obviously, but dynamically, a family business can be quite difficult at times because of different or previous relationships that you've had in the family. How did you find joining that company?
It was extremely frustrating, actually. I learned so much. It was only me and my father at that point, because my brother was still young and my sister too. So I was only me and my father, no other family members. But working with your father is tough, because being a founder of an SME, he was used to being the god of this organization. So everyone basically follows the footsteps of the founder quite always. And I didn't think that. I wanted to do it my own way, and I wanted to change things around and try things. And he was not so happy with that. He was happy with the idea. But then when we come to discuss a certain thing that I wanted to change, he always used to say, you're too young, you don't know yet, you need to learn. And he never took my opinions. And so the first 4 years when I did that, it was quite a learning curve, because I wanted to prove myself. So I worked really hard. However, because I wanted to prove myself and he never gave me the approval easily, I was always frustrated, feeling that I am good and he's not saying I'm good. So it touched me in a weakness I have, which is this always feeling I'm not doing enough. So I ran really fast. So I learned, and he gave me responsibilities, but it was really frustrating.
And then you then moved to McKinsey's, which big company, totally different culture, totally different sort of atmosphere. You worked in Milan originally, and then you set up the Cairo office as well. What was that like, that shift? What made you move there, and why did you target McKinsey's when you were looking to get employed?
So I decided to do INSEAD after the 4 years with my father because I wanted to learn. I said, if I want to take this SME and turn it into a conglomerate or whatever, I need to have the same education as people who work in conglomerates, basically. And I always saw other companies very successful. So I thought I need to learn how to do that. So I went to INSEAD first with this mindset. And during INSEAD, I remember sitting in class and the professor always joked if some question came up that's really hard, he always said, I give this to the McKinsey guys. You give this to the McKinsey boys. So, and I literally asked the person beside me, who are these McKinsey boys that people are always, and I went to McKinsey to learn. For me, it was a learning journey. I wanted to learn more about strategy, and I joined the organization practice within McKinsey. So I wanted to learn about culture and organization. And so for me, it was a pure learning curve, learning thing. So I joined to learn, and I learned a lot. McKinsey is a great school because you work every few months in a different project. So you see strategies of different sectors, you see different problems you're solving, you deal with the top management always. And it was quite an eye-opening. And also McKinsey has a way of doing stuff. So you need to be structured, for example. You cannot be unstructured. You need to be on time. There's certain things that they drill into you, which, given my entrepreneurial past and doing things my own, having this consulting concept where it's a bit more sophisticated, both together, I think was for me, in hindsight, quite a good combination.
Did you find it quite tough being in a large corporate, being so entrepreneurial?
Yeah, it was. So McKinsey is quite entrepreneurial because you do your own thing in a way. I mean, it's still a large corporate, but there's the nucleus of the team. So in a way, it's not, I wouldn't compare it to other large corporates, like, for example, Döhler, when we speak about Döhler. But McKinsey especially is drooling. You need to be on top form. You need to do everything perfect. Everyone is really good. Everyone's really smart. So you're always pushing yourself to the maximum. The engagement managers or your managers are usually not that good managers. So everything I talked about pushing you forward from an emotional perspective, they don't. They know you're a hard worker. So it's just all, pushing, very rough pushing. So in that regard, it was not the best, but I loved my days there because the more senior people, the directors and the partners, I had some great mentors, and they are the ones who really care out for you and give you some of the best feedback I got. And it's a very feedback oriented place, and feedback is the best because you really help. So yeah, I mean, I didn't love the fact that it's too big, but I have to say this was not my problem. McKinsey gives you some of both because you can choose your own way within McKinsey. So it's a bit entrepreneurial as well. Like for me, doing the Egypt office was something which for me was quite entrepreneurial, or joining the practice of organization, very entrepreneurial because nobody else does it. And I thought it's something for me. So in that regard, McKinsey can be quite entrepreneurial, actually.
Yeah, so I worked for PwC and KPMG as a consultant for a number of years, and so that sort of idea of, this is my word, not your words, but that sort of perfectionism. They expect a high quality of work. They expect the determination. They expect all the cultural stuff is an expectation. It's not a, and I also felt that high quality of work. Now being an entrepreneur and working with smaller teams, trying to implement the best pieces of those of being an SME or being a small business versus the best of what these consultants can bring. And I think that's what gives people a really good grounding when they do have that experience of working in a large corporate. That professionalism that you bring to it, I think, is important.
I agree 100%.
Okay, so you moved on to Döhler in Egypt, which is the largest manufacturer of food ingredients in Middle East and Africa. What made you move there?
Actually, I didn't move there. Actually, we built it, because what happened is I moved back to the family business, back to my father. This time I told him I'm back after McKinsey and INSEAD. I want to take charge of whatever. So I became the CEO of the family business, and we spent 4 years fixing a lot of stuff, because I came back with enthusiasm and like the plans to change. So we implemented SAP, like the ERP system, which is quite big for an SME, but we started to do juice concentrates, which is a different business we used to do before, only flavors and fragrances. So we entered into actual fruit squeezing and fruit juice concentrates. We did a number of things. And then eventually, 4 years in, one of the things that was we did rebranding and we went to seminars. So one of the exhibitions in Dubai, we met people from Dola, and they really liked the brand. And who are you guys? And then we started talking with them, and eventually they bought the food part of our SME. And then I became, and my brother, who also was by then with us in the company, we both joined Dola Egypt. So we created from Delta Aromatic Food, we made it Dola Egypt. And we ran this Dola Egypt for 6 years, starting from nothing actually. And then we took it all the way until it was 600 employees, and it was quite a successful. Yeah, we grew it quite a bit. I mean, this was also very interesting because I had the same company first as an SME family business, and then with someone like Dola in your back, and the difference is huge. I mean, if you talk about SMEs, when they deal with banks are not that cooperative as when they are with a big conglomerate. When you deal with hiring, it's so much harder to hire good talent because they want to have the big name and on their CV of someone like Dola. So it was very interesting to see this contrast and to have to being able to go way further because of the push and the being part of this big conglomerate. So although I like SMEs a lot, and our size is always within the SME, even when we grew, but having the investment strength and the brand and the power of a multinational was quite eye-opening, and we were able to scale it quite a bit and grow the business quite a bit. So yeah, it was interesting.
What's your view on the difference between growing and scaling? Because there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of books about growing businesses and that different stage when you're actually trying to scale it. Can you talk me through your views on how the best way of being able to scale a business is?
So scaling, when the word scaling for me always means you already have a business model which is tried, which is successful for in certain places, and then you take the same concept, you take this exact business model, and then you scale it either in different geographies or different type of clients, or you just grow the same thing again and again. And the growth that we did usually was more of doing different things. So for example, we changed we added lines and different fruits. We did different products from within. For example, orange, you can do so many products that come out of the orange itself, from oil to pulp to different products. And in our case, the growth was always not really scaling in terms of taking one concept and then having scale it out. It was more of how can we either add products, add geographies, add new ideas, being more efficient here. You know what I mean? So yeah, for me, that's the difference. And we were usually on the growth in terms of products, etc., rather than the scaling of the same exact idea and just.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. Tell me about your current business, Moonbase Capital. What does it do? Who do you help? And I suppose why do you set it up?
So after we exited as a family from Dola, we had an option to go, and at a certain time it was too big to stay. I wanted to stay in this size of the SME. At this point, I did not know about search funds. So my concept was tech, maybe go to do a startup or invest in startups, given that I just had an exit, and no better place you have this other than Silicon Valley. So I applied to Stanford and got accepted. I did the MSX program, which is a full-time MBA-like program for a year, but for more older people, let's say, developed leaders. But it's basically older people, and was fantastic. But I did not find myself in the startup world for different reasons, and I learned about search funds. And because of my love to SMEs, I totally love the concept. I remember being in class, just listening to this and saying that's like a brilliant concept, this whole search fund concept, which I don't know if your listeners know about search funds, or shall I give?
No, please tell us a sort of explanation of it as well.
So search funds, the name is a bit confusing, but it is you invest, or you as an investor help, support, invest with an entrepreneur who is going out to look for a business to buy. So it's not an entrepreneur who has an idea and a startup idea. It's an entrepreneur who would love to be a CEO of an SME, does not have the SME located yet, but would like to spend 2 years looking through different SMEs until he or she can locate one SME. And they cannot do it on their own because they need some money, which we as investors provide, usually around €500,000 for two years of searching. And we do it as a number of investors. So we do usually anywhere between 5 and 10% of this investment. So we maybe pay €30,000 and then you have 15 others, each putting €30,000. So it's each one putting a small amount of money to help this entrepreneur to find the company. And then during these 2 years, we also support with business ideas, with sector knowledge, with due diligence, whatever. So until eventually the searcher, we call it searcher or the search fund, they find a target, they come back to us investors, and then if we like the business, we invest usually around €500,000 per investor. And then the searcher becomes the CEO. We continue to serve on the board and advise and help. Eventually they exit in a number of years. And I always say it's doing a private equity job, because at the end of the day, you buy a company that's existing for many years. And so you do a private equity job, exactly. However, you do it very much with a venture capital style of work, because there's an entrepreneur and there's a lot of different investors that put in money each, and there's a lot of mentoring and et cetera, et cetera. So it's this combination of both. And the returns, according to Stanford, who produce a document every 2 years about this sector, is higher than any other asset class. So you're talking about, in the States, it's 33% IRR, which is over the past 30 years average. So it's quite high, which makes it very exciting that you get a good return, at the same time work with entrepreneurs and help them. So I fell in love with the concept. And this, I was at Stanford during the COVID days. And I after Stanford, my wife and my kids were like, we need to go back to Europe. And I was okay with that, because I have 4 kids, and just having 4 kids squeezed in a small house while I was studying at the age of 46 was also, was enough. So we decided to go back to Europe and invest in search funds. And when I started working with searchers in Europe, I noticed that there is not so many investors who are from the same background, which is CEOs, consultants, etc. So I felt that there is a lot of value proposition, a lot of value I can add to these searchers. And we came up with the idea to also get a number of advisors that would also help the searchers. So we said, if we're going to help the searchers, let's do it properly. So we are 3 partners, all who could help, but also let's get advisors. So I went back to my network in SIAD, especially, but also Stanford and McKinsey, and I got 40 different individuals who were willing to help my searchers during this journey. So now what we do at Moonbase is we have 10 searchers we're working with at the moment. We're raising our fund, so we hope to bring this number to 30 searchers. And we're creating a fund where we will have our advisors, help searchers, and eventually buy a number of good companies, work with them until they grow, and then exit. So that's what we're doing. And we're based in Barcelona.
Absolutely fascinating, that whole idea of search funds. It's not something that I've been aware of before I started doing a little bit of research on you. What's the application process for the entrepreneur to be able to be a search fund?
So usually what they do is they create a document, a PPM, a memorandum, and then they start sending to a number of different investors. There are funds, and there are individual people who are CEOs and have some extra money and would like to work with searchers to find companies. So you have a number of different people they can reach out to, and they're known because from the current entrepreneurs who are the investors around. So usually they talk to current entrepreneurs. One beautiful thing about this whole industry is people are really collaborative, different than other financial industries are different, because, for example, in private equity, either you take the deal or my competitor takes the deal. So there's a lot of some competition. In our case, the searcher works with 15 investors. So even if I lose a searcher, I cannot blame my other 14 investors, so there is no real rivalry there. So the investor basically studies the PPM. We do 1 or 2 or 3 interviews. Some investors have a personality tests they ask searchers to go through. We don't. We have 3 different stages of interviews that we do and ask different questions. Honestly, in the end of the day, you can never, from a few interviews, know which searcher will get the best company. So the best is to work with people that you want to work with and that you know have a good potential to be leaders. That's the one thing we always make sure. Can these guys be leaders or not? And then you work with them very closely. So you see how they're developing and how nice and how good it is to work with them. And then once they find the company, you make the real decision. So that's the beauty of the model. You don't have to decide once. You do pay an amount to have the option to invest once they find the company. However, if they find the company and you don't like it, they return you the money plus a markup, 50%. So what we do is we work with the ones that we think have the highest potential, but we know that half of them will either not find companies or will find companies that we don't like. So we will always try to get a bit extra searchers, work with all of them, get to know them, and then decide when we have the company, whether we want to invest or not.
What do you think are you mentioned about leadership? What do you think is the critical points that you look for when you're looking for a search funder that is going to be a leader, is able to be a CEO of a company? What do you look for? So
let me answer this in the SME world, because in a small company, I think the leaders are a bit different than large ones. But for us, you need someone that can formulate and communicate a vision to this small group in a way that's authentic, where they believe our future is better with this transition, because you are having an SME where the founder has been doing it for 20 years. So many of the people within this SME look forward to a change or look forward to a better tomorrow. So first of all, you need someone who could come up with an idea, explain it to them, have them excited that there is a better tomorrow. Secondly, someone who is willing to work one-on-one with people who are not as sophisticated as teams that they worked with in the past, work with people who need one-on-one support, be humble enough to really roll up the sleeves and because a SME CEO does not have the privilege of hiring 6-7 top tier managers to report to her or him. So what you need to do is you need to have the ability to work on different topics, be able to go back to the investors and advisors and get best practice from them, and then go back, work with this team very closely, and be willing to deal with mistakes and humbleness. This humbleness is important because in many cases you work with people who've been working together in a certain environment for 30 years. So you need to be able to deal with them on a soft yet hard, like you need to put limits, but you also need to have this personal way of exciting them and working with them without them rebelling against you, because they're all friends. You're the one coming from outside. So if you don't play it well, there is a risk of them rebelling against you in a way which will make your life much harder. So for us, it's a lot of interpersonal skills and people. And then because we and other investors have the knowledge, if you have a searcher who's willing to learn and listen and apply and go back and is humble again to do this many, many times over, they will do the great job. Because marketing per se, HR per se, finance per se are not complex. If you're willing to listen and learn and go apply it and come back and work with the people, etc., you'll get it done. That's how I got it done after McKinsey. I was just talking to my mentors, looking at documents, things I've learned before, going back, implementing it, doing it wrong, doing it right. And this cycle, and you need someone who's willing to go through this, in my opinion.
And the businesses that they're buying, are they discounted? Are they options because someone's an older entrepreneur that wants to retire, or are they looking for investment? Like how do you choose or how does the searcher find those businesses that are best suited for them? What type of businesses are they?
So there is very specific criteria that was formulated probably by Irv Grousbeck, who is the father of search funds, who was teaching at Harvard and Stanford, and over the years, which we are all looking at. So these are, for example, you look at very healthy companies that's been making profit for a few years. You're talking about businesses in the size of $1 to $5 million or euros EBITDA. So and businesses that have recurring revenues or contracts, something that's stable, businesses that do not require a lot of capex to grow. So businesses that are in a sector that's growing and has a future. So there's very specific criteria that we all follow. The beauty of this criteria is that at the end of the day, you're not talking about a turnaround or you're talking about a hidden gem, basically, a company that is beautiful in every aspect and has the potential to grow. And the way to find these is not through brokers usually, although some are broker deals. But usually what happens is the searcher spends 2 years with a team of interns starting with a database, trying to see which sectors fit these criteria and start to send out a lot of emails, up to 6,000 emails, or 6,000 companies, maybe each company 5-6 emails, where they keep following up on these emails and meeting them and having due diligences, giving a letter of LOIs and like working until they can in the end locate one business. So it's a very tough process of 2 years looking and sifting through companies and talking to leaders until you find a company that fits this criteria. But by no means is it a discounted for any reason other than the fact of its size, because you talk about businesses that are too small for the private equity in many countries. I mean, in the UK, for example, private equities tend to go quite low. So the UK has a bit of a different story. However, in the rest of Europe and the US, if you have a business for 2 million euros EBITDA, it's too small for the private equity model to flourish on. Of course, some private equities would go, but in general, they don't. So the founder who's been doing this for 20 years finds that too small for private equities, not too many options to sell. The legacy is very important for these founders. So to have a searcher or an entrepreneur who will keep the name, keep the people, just grow the business, and as if he's the new founder is very attractive to the founders. And also the fact that the founder can exit 100%, because even in private equity deals, they will usually ask the founder to stay on, to continue the management, at least for 3 to 5 years. And in many cases, the founder is like, you know what, if I take all this money, I might as well go. And the beauty is you go and knock on these doors. You knock on the door and you talk to them and you give them the idea of why don't you sell? And it's very tough, I have to say. It's successful in 70-80% of the times. So most searchers find a good business. But in some cases, searchers spend 2 years of hard work and fail to close a deal, or they find businesses that do not fall into the criteria and the investors don't like it. There's different reasons. I'm talking now about something which is called traditional search funds, which is what we usually work with. There's also self-funded search funds, which is a searcher or entrepreneur who wants to buy a company, but does not ask for investors to put money, etc., etc. They just, on their own, on their part-time, look for companies. Once they find the company, then they go to investors and tell them, hey, I did a self-funded search. Now I have this company. Would you like to invest? So there is also this one, which has a bit of differences to what I talked, but the same logic is still there.
And what's the European market, the industries that you're investing in Europe, and how do they differ from what you were doing in the US?
So currently, we're not investing in the US yet. I mean, I know the US market because of my Stanford days, but we're focusing on France and Spain the most. We have 4 French searchers, and they're doing a fantastic job. We have 4 Spanish search. So when the model came, so it started in the 80s in Stanford and Harvard, and it took maybe 10, 12 years to start having some traction and people starting to try it on a larger scale. So I think 10 years after the model was launched, you just had your 10th searcher. Huh? So it took time in the beginning. But then people noticed that it's a brilliant model and it's making a lot of money, etc., etc. And around maybe 10, 15 years ago, people who studied in the States started coming and doing the model either in the UK and Spain. And the investors who were all in the US back then wanted to come and invest in Europe, but they wanted to have people who are local, which is very important for the model, to have local people who can deal with this. And many of the investors who are now actually quite big started with these early American investors, and with European searchers working in the UK first and then Spain. And many of them came from the financial world. You have, of course, some entrepreneurs as well and business people, but many came from the private equity or financial world. And that's how Spain became the biggest in that field in Europe. You have a lot of searchers, it's a lot of investors, it's a very busy market. And then the second market I would say is France and the UK. France and UK is special because private equity is very, very shrewd and strong, and they go to smaller businesses, and every deal is probably brokered because the brokers are so good, I'd say. So in the end of the day, it's a bit of a different type of market. It's hard to get a company which is 5 million for sure, because private equities would for sure outbid you. France, however, started recently. I mean, when we had our 4 searchers around a year and a half ago, there was only 8 searchers in the history of France. Just to give you a perspective. Now you have, this year, we have around maybe 7, 8 searchers, new searchers just this year. But just a year and a half ago, the history of France only had 8 searchers. So it's really growing. But yeah, I mean, I would say France, UK, Spain are booming. Germany is coming, is also coming. Is a bit behind, but it's also coming. And then you have Italy, which is again slowly growing. So yeah, Europe is doing quite well actually.
What's the biggest hurdle that you've faced at Moonbase?
I mean, I don't know if it's a hurdle or not, but we were very worried of how to enter this community and have an impact and have a name that would attract good searchers. And we were able to quickly find out that we have something to add, but we needed to get the word out and get people to know that we want to add value and we will add value. And we did a lot of marketing and branding and webinars and white papers and blogs, and we did a lot of effort in that regard. And that's not the norm, because people usually in financial sector don't do this type of things too much. So we were a bit of, not sure of what we're doing, and it worked out really, really well, because the word is out and people are very happy with what we've been doing. I see even others are now following suit, and they have more LinkedIn posts, which is great, because we want to get the word out. You're not the only one who didn't hear about search funds before this interaction. Most people I talked to didn't, but we need to change that. We need more and more people to know about search funds. So this is one thing which we did really, really well, and it came from this fear we had, and it turned out to be the best thing we've done. So now most people in Europe know about Moonbase and know the value we add, and we have connections with so many people, and also with investors. I also did the effort of talking to so many investors. So I did all this, and it's paying off quite well now. And the community is great. I mean, that's the best thing about search funds. That people are really helping each other. Anyone you talk to will support you as an entrepreneur or as an investor. So it's a very healthy environment, let's say.
And your company has 3 partners that are part of it. How did you start your business with the other 2 partners?
So actually, we were 4 partners at the point. We started off with Sergio, who was a friend of mine from the INSEAD days, and he was starting to do his own search. He wanted to be a searcher, so he contacted me this was the first searcher to contact me because we were friends, and he contacted me to invest with him. And then he's from Peru, and Carlos, my partner, is half Peruvian. So I asked Carlos if he knows him well. And then Carlos is like, I know him, he's a great guy. Let's invest with him. Maybe he can lead our investment in search funds. And so we started off with Sergio. In 1 or 2 years, he decided, and we decided to part ways. But that's how it started with the 4 of us. Khaled is my brother. So he's my partner for everything I do so far. And it was a natural fit. Carlos was my friend a long time ago, and we talked about search funds giving Sergio, and Sergio is also a good friend and still a good friend. So that's how it all started. And Barcelona came because Sergio was living in Barcelona, and I started there. And I think it's very healthy to be in Spain, because Spain is the biggest market after all. And it's good to be in Barcelona because it's a great city. And coming from Cairo and San Francisco, I prefer to be in a smaller, city with a beach, which is great. And there's great searchers there. And so that's how it came.
Amazing. What's the plan for the next 2 to 5 years for you and your business?
I am so bullish about search funds. I think there is millions of SMEs that can be over the years, because some of them are not there yet, but there's so many SMEs, there's so many entrepreneurs that can come. So I think search funds will become a major asset class within the finance very soon. So I think the growth of search funds, if we're positioned the way we are now and we can grow in this market, I think Moonbase will have quite a big part to play. So I would love to create small funds. I think usually search funds are invested by funds that are mimicking the private equity style funds. We're trying to create a fund which is a bit different. We're trying to create a fund which is smaller in size, so we can focus more on a smaller number of companies and really help them, because I think investor has a big role in helping the searcher. And I hope that in 2 to 5 years, we have plenty of these 15 million euro funds. We have a lot of LPs we choose LPs who want to be involved, who want to also help the searcher. So to give even more back to the searcher. So we hope to have settled this new type of fund as a mainstream thing where others are even copying it. And eventually having a lot of those. Maybe you have a fund for the UK and a fund for Spain and a fund and then you can have LPs who put a bit here and there to do extra diversification. And I want to focus on the US for sure. So I'm very excited about growing within the search fund world. And I think also search funds is good for the economy, because you have these SMEs that would eventually fail when the founder dies or leaves the business, and to have this continuation and growing them is healthy, and it's needed. More than 50% of the GDP of Europe is SMEs. So to have a solution for that is also very personal for me, given that I am from an SME and I love SMEs. So I think it's time that SMEs find a good investment and a good way. So that's where I would see myself, and very excitingly, plus working closely with entrepreneurs and coaching them. And I love this. I love working with people and connecting with them. So that's another thing I want to spend a lot of time doing in the next 5 years.
Amazing. Look, we're coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. The first one is, what's the best decision that you made in your career?
The best decision is, it's not only one, it's multiple, but the same theme, is keeping pushing forward. Because when I went to INSEAD, was a big push forward. My father was like, why? You already can be a CEO in 2 years. Why do you need to spend all this money? And the same with when I went to McKinsey. I could have went back becoming a CEO. It was much easier. And Stanford even more. I exited my company. I was, I already been a CEO for 10 years. I could have done anything. But then I decided to take my kids, go to the States, work on that. So I think my answer is pushing hard, going out of the comfort zone, even when the comfort zone is so comfortable, would be the best thing I've done. And I think it's paying off.
And this is not part of the 6 questions. It's just, I'm intrigued. So you said a couple of times that you've moved your family and moved your kids around the world where you've been. What do you think their experiences have been, living in different countries, having different experiences, different cultures, different things? What, from their perspective, what do you think they've learned from being a global citizen?
So they were a bit unlucky with the Stanford, because it was during the COVID years. So COVID year. So they spent half of the time enjoying California, which was great. And it is so open. I mean, kids who travel and see different cultures and see different people really become different, because they become non-judgmental. They become much open to ideas. They know that there are different people. So I would recommend it to everyone. But of course, we were unlucky that we had COVID, so we're stuck in a small house at Stanford campus for 6 months. So in that case, it was. I'm just laughing because if I ask my wife, she'll tell you it was a bad experience because of that 6 months. But overall, it's highly recommended. Now also moving to Barcelona, again, the same. They love it. We travel a lot in Europe, and they are. I think the world is becoming more and more global. My kids are very similar to kids anywhere in the world. So I think having them live and travel is very, very useful.
Absolutely. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
It was about feedback. In McKinsey, one of my partners was giving me feedback one day, and I was a bit defensive. I was explaining to him why whatever feedback he's giving me is not. And then he just stopped me and looked at me, and it was very sharp, actually. He told me, listen, feedback is for you. I'm telling you this because you are going to improve from it. So don't negotiate what I see. I know what I see. And he was very tough on it. And I thought about it, and it was great advice, because now I'm trying to learn as much as possible from everyone around me. And I think it's key and important for you to listen, because there's so many blind spots that you don't see. And to have good feedback is a major learning experience for me, at least.
Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
I'd say my brother, who's 10 years younger than me, but we've been partners forever, and I taught him a lot. He came basically after my McKinsey days. He was just graduating from university, so I gave him a lot and explained to him, gave him a lot of things to work, to do, and take responsibility. So he grew really, really fast, and now he's the one always pushing me. He's more the numbers guy. I'm more the strategy, and so he's the one always pushing me. And so I would say my brother, we have a partnership which is quite unique. And although he's 10 years younger, I always consider him the older one, because he's always pushing me and pushing forward. So yeah, I'd say my brother.
Awesome. Do you have any regrets?
No, I never have regrets. I don't have regrets, because I think everything we do is a learning. And you never know if you do something, it's going to be good or bad. There's no way to know. I mean, you can think that you got invited to this thing, which is great, and it turns out to be the worst thing, and the opposite. So I do these things with this mindset. And I know that if it's bad in the end, I did it with this mindset. So I never have a regret given this mindset.
What's the mindset that you're referring to?
It's the mindset that any decision you make, there is no way for you to know if it's good or bad. There's no way. I mean, I went to INSEAD thinking that's the best thing, and it was, but it could have been the worst. You know what I mean? And the opposite is true. Many things happened to me in my life, and I thought it will ruin my life. And then later I find out that actually it was quite good. So I don't have regrets, because any decision I've made, I knew that my decision is a very small part of the overall equation, and there's a lot of luck and a lot of karma and a lot of other things involved. So I never had regret of the decision I made, because it wasn't that important. It's just part of the overall, it's not me who actually is to be blamed in a way, So yeah, I don't have a...
Okay, fantastic. What are you most proud of?
Interesting. Nothing specific, actually. What am I most proud of? I'd say my family. I mean, me and my wife built a family with 4 kids. It's hard, and we also are pushing ourselves. So we are not just taking it easy, and we're traveling and doing this and doing that. So now we're trying homeschooling for a year, just because we want to travel more in Europe, given that we just moved to Barcelona. So who would do like homeschooling with 4 kids while you're raising your fund? And so I'm proud. I would say I'm proud of building this cocoon, which is very tough, but it's my comfort, and it's kids are hard, but you learn how to love through them, because so much unconditional love, and also you learn how to hate, because sometimes you want to kill them as well. But I'd say I'm proud of building this this nest with my wife. So I'm proud of her the most, to endure with me and be able to get us where we are and travel all this on a whim. So yeah, I'm proud of her the most, I'd say.
Amazing. I've got 2 girls, and that's absolutely plenty for me. I don't know how you do it with 4. I don't know how you do it. What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy? I don't have. I mean, my father has this legacy concept much more than me. So for him, was we take this and make it a conglomerate, and I don't get married to things I've created too much. So I'm at the moment doing stuff which I love. I don't see my legacy. I don't have this, I think it's a bit egocentric to overthink about having a legacy and doing a legacy. I would love to be very useful to people. So I would love, if I would say a legacy, I'd love to be a mentor to people that I touch. So even after I go, they can say, there is this guy who actually touched our lives. I love to touch people's lives on a personal level. So this is, if I would have a legacy, it would be more in people's hearts, where they would say, there's this guy who helped us out. But that's it. No structure that I would like to leave as a legacy.
Okay, fantastic. And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you about search funds, about Moonbase? Where can they find you?
I mean, LinkedIn is a very good way, and also our website, www.moonbasecapital.com. Through our website, there is an easy way to reach us. And I love to reach people. So please, anyone who wants to know more about search funds, where I can help in any way, I'm very happy to support and help.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you so much for the interview today. It's been absolutely fascinating learning about yourself and learning about your journey as well as your current business in Moonbase. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Mark. It was really a pleasure. I love the questioning, and thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.